In a crumbling desert saloon, a traveling stage tech was about to inherit more than rotting floorboards and dusty bottles. What started as a 3-day property inspection took a shocking turn when a wall collapsed and exposed a black glass bottle sealed with a serpent, one that made every local who saw it go pale and back away. Lena Calder wasn't your typical inheritor. For 15 years, she had spent her life rigging lights and fixing mechanical problems for theatre crews. Known for her practical mind and refusal to believe in superstition, when she discovered the wax-sealed bottle marked 1903 hidden behind a plastered-over niche, she had no idea she was holding proof of a century-old mass poisoning. Lena refused to hand it over, a decision that would lead to arson attempts, threatening messages, and a face-off with the town's most beloved leaders. What began as a plan to sell quickly and leave would become an investigation into blood whiskey, stolen land, and 19 bodies buried under a philanthropic lie. The desert rail town would never be the same after the granddaughter of Miss B. Calder opened the seal and exposed what powerful families had spent generations trying to erase. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Lena Calder stood in the doorway of the Dustlight Saloon, holding a ring of tarnished keys that felt like anchors in her palm. The building sagged against the desert sky, its clapboard siding bleached to the color of old bone. Paint curled away from the wood in long strips, and the windows were so grimy that the afternoon sun barely penetrated. A hand-painted sign above the door swung on a single rusted chain, creaking with each gust of wind. Dustlight Saloon East, 1899. Her grandmother's kingdom, now Lena's unwanted inheritance. She had not seen Miss B in 15 years. Not since her mother packed their lives into a dented sedan and drove away from this rail town without looking back, muttering about old debts and older grudges. Lena had built a life elsewhere, traveling with theatre crews, rigging lights and fixing what broke. She was good at solving problems that had clear mechanical solutions. This saloon, with its rot and ghosts and the lawyer's polite letter informing her of Miss B's death, was not that kind of problem. The plan was simple. Inventory the contents, list the property, sell to the first offer, and leave. 3 days, maximum. She pushed open the door. The interior smelled of dust, stale beer, and something sharper, almost medicinal. The bar stretched along the left wall, its mahogany surface scarred by decades of glasses and elbows and carved initials. Bottles lined the back mirror, most of them empty or holding only dregs. A jukebox hulked in the corner, unplugged, its chrome dulled. Tables and chairs were stacked haphazardly, some broken, some merely forgotten. The floorboards groaned under her weight. Behind the bar, Lena found a red healer curled on a nest of bar towels. The dog lifted her head, ears pricked, eyes cautious but not hostile. A water bowl sat nearby, still half full. Someone had been coming by to feed her. "Hey there," Lena said softly. The dog stood, stretched, and padded over to sniff Lena's outstretched hand. After a moment, she accepted a scratch behind the ears. A collar tag read Penny in Miss B's careful script. "Guess you come with the place?" Lena murmured. Penny's tail wagged once, a tentative agreement. Lena spent the first hour opening windows, sweeping cobwebs, and making notes on her phone. The back storage room was a maze of crates and old kegs. The upstairs apartment where Miss B had lived was surprisingly tidy, the bed made, a book on the nightstand, as if the old woman had simply stepped out and never returned. Lena tried not to think about that. She was measuring the main room when she heard the crack. It started as a whisper, a settling sound that old buildings make. Then came a deeper groan, and a section of the wall behind the bar buckled inward. Plaster dust billowed. Lena jumped back, coughing, as a 2-foot section of wall collapsed entirely, revealing a dark hollow behind the surface. When the dust cleared, she saw it, a niche barely larger than a bread box. Plastered over and hidden for who knew how long, inside sat a black glass bottle, sealed with dark wax that had been stamped with a serpent coiled around itself. Beside the bottle lay a folded bar ledger, its leather cover cracked with age. Lena reached in carefully, her fingers closing around the bottle first. It was heavier than she expected, and cold despite the afternoon heat. Etched into the glass, just visible through the dark surface, was a date, 1903. She set the bottle on the bar and unfolded the ledger. Pages of entries in faded ink, dates and initials and amounts. But what caught her attention were the margin notes, written in a sharper, more recent hand. Miss B's handwriting. Trust paper, not promises. Check the deeds. They built this town on blood whiskey. Penny had come to stand beside her, staring at the bottle with her head cocked. A low whine escaped her throat. Lena was still puzzling over the notes when the saloon door opened. An old man in a feed cap poked his head in, saw the bottle on the bar, and went pale. "You found it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Found what?" "The bottle you never pour." He backed out without another word, the door swinging shut behind him. Within an hour, 3 more locals had glanced in, seen the bottle, and left quickly. No one would explain. One woman, younger, with a child on her hip, simply shook her head and said, "Put it back, honey. Some things should stay buried." But Lena had never been good at taking advice she did not understand. She wrapped the bottle in a bar towel and tucked the ledger into her backpack. If this town had a secret, she would figure it out, sell the property, and then leave. 3 days, maximum. That evening, as the sun bled red across the desert and the temperature finally dropped, Lena decided to sleep in the upstairs apartment rather than drive back to the motel. Penny seemed content to stay with her, curling at the foot of the bed. Lena was reading through the ledger again, trying to make sense of the initials and Miss B's cryptic notes, when Penny's head lifted suddenly. The dog's ears swiveled toward the window. A low growl built in her chest. Lena set the ledger aside and moved to the window, careful to stay in shadow. Below, in the alley behind the saloon, a figure stood near the back door, not moving, just standing, watching. After a long moment, the figure turned and walked away, but not before Lena caught the scent drifting through the cracked window. Coal oil. Sharp and unmistakable. She went downstairs, Penny at her heels. The back door was still locked from the inside, but when she opened it and checked the ground outside, she found a half-spent match lying in the dirt, still faintly warm. Her hands were shaking as she locked the door again and wedged a chair under the handle. Someone had been about to burn the place down, or threaten to, or simply send a message. The next morning, a man in a city inspector's jacket arrived without appointment or warning. He was young, nervous, and kept glancing at his phone as if expecting instructions. "Routine inspection," he said, though his eyes said otherwise. He walked through the saloon, taking notes, pointing out code violations with the enthusiasm of someone following a script. Electrical upgrades needed. Structural concerns. Water damage. Fire hazards. "Honestly," he said, lowering his voice as if confiding in her, "this building is a liability. The city has programs, you know, accelerated demolition options. We can expedite the paperwork, have it down in a week. You walk away with a check and no headaches." "I will think about it," Lena said, showing him to the door. He paused on the threshold. "Some properties, they have history, complicated history. Sometimes it is easier to start fresh." After he left, Lena sat at the bar with Penny beside her and the black bottle in front of her. She thought about her mother's hurried departure, about Miss B's margin notes, about the match in the alley and the inspector's pointed words. 3 days, maximum. That had been the plan, but plans changed when someone tried to burn your inheritance before you could sell it. Plans changed when a bottle marked with a serpent made grown men go pale. Plans changed when your dead grandmother left you a ledger full of secrets and a warning written in the margins. Lena picked up her phone and searched for the town archive. If this bottle had a story, someone had written it down. And if Miss B had hidden it behind a wall, that story was worth protecting. Penny watched her with intelligent eyes, tail thumping once against the floor. "All right," Lena said to the dog. "To the bottle, to the ghost of Miss B hovering somewhere in the dust and the silence. Let us find out what you were hiding." The town archive occupied the ground floor of what had once been the rail depot. A brick building with tall windows and a freight elevator that no longer worked. Dr. Omar Vale kept his practice upstairs, a small clinic that served the rail workers and ranch hands who could not afford the hospital across town. Downstairs he kept the records: birth certificates, death certificates, land deeds, newspaper clippings, coroner reports, and all the paper debris of a century and a half of human ambition and failure. Lena found him in the back room, surrounded by filing cabinets and archival boxes, wearing exam gloves and reading a fragile ledger under a magnifying lamp. He looked up when she entered, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You must be B. Calder's granddaughter," he said without preamble. "I heard you were in town. Heard you found something interesting. Word traveled fast here." Lena set her backpack on the table.
"How much do you know?"
"Enough to guess you did not come here for genealogy research." He closed the ledger he had been reading and gave her his full attention. "Show me." She unwrapped the black bottle and set it on the table. Omar leaned forward, studying the serpent seal without touching it. His expression shifted from curiosity to recognition to something darker. "Where did you find this?" "Behind a wall in the saloon. Hidden in a niche. This was with it." She handed him Miss B's ledger. Omar took the ledger carefully, turning pages with the reverence of someone who understood that paper could outlive stone. He read in silence, his finger tracing the margin notes. When he reached the middle of the ledger, he stopped and looked up at her. "Do you know what this is?" "A bar ledger. Sales, inventory, that kind of thing." "But the notes in the margins, those are my grandmother's. She was trying to tell me something, not just you, anyone who found it." Omar stood and moved to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder thick with yellowed newspaper clippings. He spread them across the table. June 14th, 1903, a charity banquet held at the Old Territorial Hall. 53 people attended. By midnight, 19 were dead, and another 12 were gravely ill. The official cause was listed as spoiled spirits. Bad whiskey from a disreputable distiller. Lena stared at the headlines. Tragedy at charity gala. Town mourns sudden deaths. Relief fund established for victims' families. What does this have to do with the bottle? Omar tapped the serpent seal. "This mark. It is the insignia of Serpent Springs Distillery. They operated out of the next territory, supplied half the saloons in the region. After the 1903 incident, they were shut down. Their owner disappeared. And the brand was erased from every record except the ones people forgot to destroy." He pulled out another file, this one filled with handwritten coroner notes. "I have been collecting these for years. There were other incidents, smaller, a ranch hand here, a gambler there. Always the same symptoms. Always whiskey with no clear provenance. You are saying it was not an accident. I am saying it was very convenient." Omar opened another file, this one containing land deeds and transfer records. "Look at the dates. In the 6 months following the banquet, 11 parcels of land changed hands. Families sold to a holding company for far below market value. Distressed sales, the records call them. Families grieving, desperate for cash to cover debts or relocate. The holding company was owned by a rail magnate named Cornelius Hart." The name sent a chill through Lena. "Hart? As in Mayor Celeste Hart," her great-grandfather. "Within 2 years, he owned a third of the town. He donated generously, of course, funded the first school, built a water tower, endowed a hospital wing. The town called him a savior." Omar's voice was dry, clinical, but his eyes were angry. "Your grandmother knew. She collected evidence for decades. Matchbooks, receipts, coroner reports people thought were lost. She was meticulous." Lena picked up the bottle, turning it slowly in her hands. The serpent seemed to move in the light, scales glinting. "What is inside?" "I cannot be sure without opening it, but based on the coroner notes and the distillery records, I would guess it is a tincture. Something that mimics illness, escalates quickly, and leaves few traces in a body that is embalmed or buried fast. Arsenic or strychnine compounds, perhaps. Mixed with alcohol, it would be nearly undetectable in the chaos of a mass poisoning." "And the ledger?" Omar flipped to a page near the back. "These initials. They match the parcels that were sold. and these dates correspond to donations made to the Hart Family Trust in the years that followed. Your grandmother was building a map, a paper trail from the poisoning to the land seizures to the philanthropic myth that built this town's golden era. Lena felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders. Why did she hide it? Why not go to the authorities? Because the authorities here are elected by people who benefit from the myth. Because the Hart family funds the hospital, the schools, the infrastructure. Because exposing this would mean admitting the town was built on murder and theft. Omar met her eyes. Your grandmother was waiting for the right moment. Or the right person. I am not that person. I came here to sell and leave, then you should put the bottle back and forget you found it. Omar's tone was not unkind. But I do not think you will. Lena looked at the bottle, at the ledger, at the files spread across the table. She thought about the match in the alley, the inspector's too convenient visit, the way the locals had gone pale at the sight of the bottle. She thought about Miss B, who had poured drinks and kept secrets and hidden a serpent in the walls. If I keep digging, what am I up against? A mayor who is beloved and well-connected. A security consultant named Wyatt Griggs, who used to be sheriff until evidence started disappearing under his watch. A network of donors and developers who have spent a century laundering blood money into civic pride. Omar closed the files. And a town that does not want to believe its heroes are thieves. Lena wrapped the bottle again and tucked the ledger back into her pack. I need to secure this. Somewhere safe. Leave it here. I have a vault for sensitive records. Climate-controlled, fireproof, locked. Will they come after you? They do not know I have it yet. Omar's smile was thin. But you should know once you start asking questions, they will notice. And they will respond. As if on cue, Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We should talk about your property. Mayor's office tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come alone. She showed it to Omar. He did not look surprised. That was fast. They have been watching since the wall came down. Someone reports, someone investigates, someone applies pressure. It is a system. He handed her a card with his personal number. Call me if you need anything, and do not go anywhere without documenting where you are and who you are with. Lena left the archive as the sun began to set, Penny trotting beside her. As she walked back toward the saloon, she noticed a dark truck idling across the street. Tinted windows. No plates visible. It did not follow when she turned the corner, but she felt eyes on her back. That night, she slept in the apartment again, the chair wedged under the door, Penny curled at her feet. She dreamed of serpents coiling through ledger pages, of matches falling like rain, of a banquet hall filled with the dead. The wind picked up after midnight, rattling the shutters and whistling through the gaps in the old building. Lena woke to Penny's low growl, a sound that vibrated through the mattress. She sat up slowly, listening. The dog's ears were pinned back, her eyes fixed on the door. Downstairs, something creaked. Lena slipped out of bed, barefoot, reaching for her phone. She opened the camera app and set it to record, then moved to the top of the stairs. Penny stayed at her heel, silent now but tense. From below came the soft scrape of a door handle being tested, then the faint click of a lock giving way. Someone had picked the back door. She killed the upstairs lights and pressed herself against the wall, phone recording. Through the gap in the stair railing, she watched a shadow move across the barroom. Tall, methodical, wearing gloves. The figure moved behind the bar, running gloved fingers along the shelves, checking the mirror backing, lifting bottles and setting them down again. Searching. Lena barely breathed. Penny trembled beside her but did not bark. The figure paused, head tilted, as if sensing something amiss. Then, with deliberate care, the intruder knelt and did something behind the bar, low to the ground, where Lena could not see. A minute later, the shadow rose and moved toward the back door. The door opened, closed, and the night returned to silence. Lena waited a full 10 minutes before descending the stairs, Penny close behind. She turned on a single lamp and moved behind the bar. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then she smelled it. Gas. The main line ran along the baseboard behind the bar. The shut-off valve was still closed, but the connector had been loosened, and the threads were packed with something soft and pink. Chewing gum. A makeshift cap that would hold for a few hours, maybe a day, then fail. When the gas built up and someone flipped a light switch or struck a match, the whole building would go up. Lena's hands shook as she photographed the valve and the gum. Then she found the playing card, left on the bar top like a calling card. The Queen of Hearts. No message, no signature. Just the card. She texted Omar immediately. Break-in. Gas line tampered. Evidence photographed. Not safe here. His reply came within seconds. Do not touch anything else. I'm calling the fire marshal and Deputy Abbasi. Stay outside. But before Lena could leave, she noticed something else. On the mirror behind the bar, barely visible in the dim light, were fingerprints. Not random smudges, but deliberate marks, as if someone had pressed gloved fingers to the glass in a pattern. She photographed those too, then grabbed her backpack, scooped up Penny, and walked out the front door into the cold night. She sat on the hood of her car, the dog beside her, and waited. The fire marshal arrived first, a gruff woman named Torres, who took one look at the gas line and swore. Deputy Noor Abbasi arrived 10 minutes later, young and serious, with a notebook and a body camera clipped to his uniform. "You are Lena Calder?" he asked. "Yes." "You found the tampering?" "I heard someone break in. I recorded it." She showed him the video. He watched in silence, then asked her to send it to his official email. Torres emerged from the saloon, shaking her head. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. That gum cap would have failed in about 6 hours. If you had turned on the lights this morning, the spark would have been enough. Who would do this? Lena asked, though she already suspected. Torres exchanged a glance with Noor. "That is a question for the deputy." Noor wrote in his notebook, then looked at Lena. "Have you received any threats? Any unusual contact since you arrived in town?" "A city inspector showed up yesterday unannounced. Suggested I demolish the building. And I got this text." She showed him the message from the mayor's office. Noor's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I will file a report. In the meantime, you should not stay here. Do you have somewhere safe?" "A motel on the highway." "Good, go there. Lock your door. And Miss Calder?" He lowered his voice. "Be careful who you trust. Not everyone in this town wants the truth to come out." After they left, Lena stood in the empty street, Penny pressed against her leg, and stared at the saloon. The Queen of Hearts card was still inside, bagged as evidence now, but its message was clear. Someone knew she had found the bottle. Someone wanted her gone, and they were willing to kill to make it happen. She thought about leaving. Packing up, driving away, letting the saloon and its secrets burn or rot or crumble into dust. It would be easy. It would be smart. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Miss B's handwriting in the margins of the ledger. Trust paper, not promises. She saw the names of the dead from 1903, 19 people who had died for someone else's greed. She saw the parcels of land stolen while families grieved. And she thought about the mayor's office, waiting for her in the morning, all smiles and velvet threats. 3 days, maximum. That had been the plan, but some inheritances could not be sold. Some truths could not be buried. And some fights, once started, had to be finished. Lena picked up Penny and carried her to the car. Tomorrow, she would walk into the mayor's office. She would smile, play along, and gather every scrap of information she could. Because if they wanted the bottle badly enough to burn down a building, then it held something more than old poison and older grudges. It held proof. And proof, in the right hands, was a weapon sharper than any serpent's fang. The mayor's office occupied the top floor of City Hall, a renovated brick building that had once been a mercantile warehouse. Large windows overlooked the main street, and the walls were lined with donor plaques, framed newspaper articles celebrating civic improvements, and photographs of ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Mayor Celeste Hart stood beside her desk as Lena entered. Her smile warm and practiced, her hand extended in greeting. "Miss Calder, thank you for coming. Please sit. Can I offer you tea?" Lena shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the appraising look that accompanied it. Celeste Hart was in her mid-50s, silver threading through dark hair pulled into an elegant knot. She wore a tailored blazer and pearl earrings, the uniform of competent authority. Everything about her projected trustworthiness and control. "Tea would be fine," Lena said. Taking the offered chair, Celeste poured from a ceramic pot painted with desert wildflowers, her movements graceful and unhurried. She settled into the chair across from Lena, crossing her legs, the picture of concern. "I was so sorry to hear about your grandmother. Beatrice was a fixture in this town for decades. A remarkable woman. You knew her?" Everyone knew Miss B. She had a gift for listening, for making people feel heard. The Dustlight was more than a bar. It was a confessional, a community center, a piece of living history. Celeste sipped her tea. "Which is why I wanted to speak with you. The building, as I understand it, is in poor condition. The inspection report was quite troubling. The inspector mentioned that. I want you to know that the city is prepared to help. We have grants for historic preservation, but given the extent of the damage, we are also exploring other options. Demolition can be costly, but we have programs that would cover the expense and compensate you fairly for the land. You would walk away with no burden and no debt." Lena set her teacup down. "That is generous. We want what is best for everyone. You did not ask for this inheritance, and you have your own life to return to. Why saddle yourself with a crumbling building and all the complications that come with it?" Celeste leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a confidential tone. "Old buildings can hold old problems. Structural issues, legal entanglements, even historical artifacts that complicate ownership. Sometimes it is better to let the past rest." The word artifacts hung in the air between them. Lena kept her expression neutral. "What kind of artifacts?" "Oh, you know how it is with saloons. Prohibition-era contraband, unlicensed spirits, things that were hidden and forgotten. If such items were found, they would need to be catalogued, assessed, potentially seized as historical property. It becomes a bureaucratic nightmare." Celeste smiled, but her eyes were sharp. "Some heirlooms harm more than they help." There it was. The acknowledgement without naming. "Celeste knew about the bottle. I appreciate your concern," Lena said carefully, "but I have not decided what to do yet. I want to understand what my grandmother left me before I make any choices." Celeste's smile tightened just a fraction. "Of course, take your time, but I hope you will be practical. This town has worked hard to build a future worth living in. We have good schools, a functional hospital, infrastructure that serves everyone. That did not happen by accident. It happened because people made smart decisions and did not let old grievances poison new growth." "Grievances?" "Every town has a complicated history, Miss Calder. Ours is no different. But dwelling on past mistakes, dredging up old scandals, it does not serve anyone. It only creates division and pain." Celeste stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I hope you will think about what I have said. The offer stands. And if you need anything, my door is always open." Lena stood as well, shaking the offered hand again. "Thank you for your time, Mayor Hart." As she left the office, she passed a bulletin board in the hallway covered with upcoming events. Community picnic, school fundraiser, and at the top, printed on expensive cardstock, an invitation to the town's centennial gala hosted by the Hart Foundation, a celebration of progress and partnership. Outside City Hall, Deputy Noor Abbasi was leaning against a lamppost, ostensibly checking his phone. When Lena emerged, he glanced up and gave a slight nod toward the coffee shop across the street. She followed at a distance, entering the cafe a minute after he did. He was at a corner table, a sealed manila envelope beside his coffee cup. Lena ordered tea and sat down. Noor slid the envelope across the table without looking at her directly. "Toxicology report from last month's Hart Foundation gala," he said quietly. "Official cause was listed as foodborne illness. Undercooked shellfish, but the lab found trace compounds that do not match any food contamination I have seen." Lena opened the envelope and scanned the report. Technical language, chemical formulas, but one phrase jumped out. "Alkaloid markers, consistent with historical strychnine derivatives. This matches the 1903 poisoning," she said. "I thought it might." The report was filed, then buried. Closed case, no follow-up. Noor finally looked at her. Someone at that gala got sick from the same kind of poison that killed 19 people 100 years ago. That is not a coincidence. Why are you giving me this? Because I am tired of watching evidence disappear. Because I joined the force to protect people, not to protect secrets. His jaw tightened. And because Wyatt Griggs has been asking questions about you. Where you go, who you talk to, what you have found. He does not ask out of curiosity. What is his connection to the mayor? He is on the Hart Foundation payroll as a security consultant. After he retired from the sheriff's department, they gave him a comfortable job with a vague title and a lot of discretion. He handles problems quietly, like gas lines. Noor's expression did not change, but his silence was confirmation enough. Watch yourself, Miss Calder, and if you need help, call me directly. Not the main line. Me. He stood, leaving a card with his personal cell number beside the envelope. Some of us still believe the law should serve everyone, not just the ones who pay for it. After he left, Lena sat with the toxicology report and the weight of what it meant. The conspiracy had not ended in 1903. It had simply evolved, moved into the light, worn a philanthropic mask. And the same poison that built the Hart fortune was still being used to protect it. She texted Omar, "Need to see Sister Inez. Do you know where I can find her?" His reply came quickly, "Rail Depot Kitchen. Open until 7. Bring an appetite and a strong stomach." The old rail depot had been converted into a community kitchen and emergency shelter years ago, run by a single nun with more stubbornness than funding. Lena found Sister Inez Morales stirring a massive pot of stew on a commercial stove. Her habit traded for jeans and a faded T-shirt that read, "Blessed are the troublemakers." The kitchen smelled of onions, cumin, and fresh bread. A dozen people sat at long tables, eating quietly or talking in low voices. Inez looked up when Lena entered, her dark eyes assessing. "You must be Bee's granddaughter. You have her jawline, stubborn. I have been told that before." "Good. The world does not need more people who bend easy." Inez wiped her hands on a towel. "Omar said you would come. Let me finish serving, then we will talk." Lena helped carry bowls of stew to the tables, earning nods of thanks from the diners. Penny, who had followed her inside, was immediately surrounded by children who fed her bread crusts and scratched her ears. When the last bowl was served and the dishes cleared, Inez poured 2 cups of coffee and led Lena to a small office at the back of the depot. The office was barely larger than a closet, but every inch was organized. Shelves held labeled boxes, filing cabinets lined one wall, and a small desk was covered with neatly stacked papers. Inez pulled a lockbox from the bottom drawer and set it on the desk. "Your grandmother and I had an understanding. She collected stories, I collected paper. Between us, we kept more truth than this town wanted preserved." Inez unlocked the box and began pulling out documents. Wills that were never probated. Debt notes that were forgiven for unclear reasons. Quitclaims signed under duress. She spread the papers across the desk. Lena leaned forward, reading dates and names. June 1903, July 1903, August 1903, family after family, transferring land to the same holding company for prices that made no economic sense. "These are the families from the banquet," Lena said, "and the families of the ranch hands who died in the smaller incidents. The gambler who choked on bad whiskey in a card game. The miner who collapsed after a celebration drink." Inez tapped one quitclaim. "This family lost their father and their land in the same month. The holding company offered enough to bury him and leave town. What choice did they have?" Lena cross-referenced the initials in Miss B's ledger with the names on the quitclaims. Everyone matched. "This is extortion." "It is worse than that. It is generational theft disguised as charity." Inez pulled out another folder, this one filled with donation records and newspaper clippings. "Look at the timeline." Within 2 years, Cornelius Hart funded the first school, built the water tower, endowed the hospital. The town called him a savior because he gave back a fraction of what he stole. And his descendants have been doing the same ever since. Do people know? Some do. Most choose not to look too hard. The Heart Foundation pays for teachers' salaries, medical equipment, youth programs. If you pull that thread, the whole fabric unravels. Who wants to admit their school was built with blood money? Who wants to believe their grandmother's hospital bed was funded by poison and theft? Inez's voice was steady but sad. Cognitive dissonance is easier than revolution. Lena thought about Mayor Celeste's office, the donor plaques, the smiling photographs. How do I prove it without destroying the town? You do not destroy the town. You cauterize the wound. You cut out the rot, and you heal what is left. Inez handed her a ledger, different from Miss B's, but complementary. This is my record. Every person who came to me with a story, a suspicion, a memory they did not trust to official channels. Oral histories that corroborate the documents. If you combine what your grandmother left you with what I have here, you have a case that cannot be dismissed as rumor or vendetta. The mayor offered to buy the saloon, to make the whole thing go away. Of course she did. Because if you dig, you will find that the current Heart Foundation portfolio still includes parcels taken in 1903. Land that was never returned, never compensated, just laundered through a century of legal transfers until the origin was obscured. Inez closed the lockbox. Your grandmother knew this. She was waiting for someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain by telling the truth. I am not a crusader. No. But you are a problem solver. And this town has a problem that has been festering for 100 years. Inez stood. One more thing. Your grandmother left envelopes with certain people. Instructions, evidence, keys to understanding the bigger picture. I have mine, but there is another with Ruthie Flint. She repairs the jukebox at the old Rosewood Club. If anyone knows where Miss B hid the rest of the puzzle, it is Ruthie. Lena gathered the copies Inez offered. Careful documentation that would survive fire or theft. Why are you helping me? Because I am tired of hearing deathbed confessions from people who lived their whole lives afraid to speak. Because the law should protect the weak, not the powerful. And because your grandmother asked me to. Inez smiled, a fierce expression that reminded Lena of a hawk. Also, I do not like bullies. Never have. As Lena left the depot, Penny trotting beside her, she felt the weight of the documents in her backpack. The bottle was one piece of evidence. The ledgers were another. But people, living witnesses with stories and scars, they were the foundation that could not be burned or buried. She checked her phone. A text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions or the dog gets hurt. Lena knelt and pulled Penny close, feeling the dog's heartbeat against her palm. Not a chance, she whispered. Ruthie Flint's workshop occupied a converted garage behind a shuttered dance hall on the edge of town. The sign above the door read Flint's Fix-It, jukeboxes, radios, and lost causes. When Lena knocked, a voice called from inside, raspy and amused. Doors open if you are not selling something or serving papers. The interior was a wonderland of vintage electronics. Jukeboxes in various states of repair lined the walls, their chrome and colored glass catching the afternoon light. Radios from the 40s and 50s crowded the shelves. Tools hung on pegboards with military precision. In the center of it all sat Ruthie Flint, a woman in her 80s, with silver hair cut short, wearing coveralls and jeweled cat-eye glasses. She was bent over a Wurlitzer, soldering iron in hand. You are B's girl, Ruthie said without looking up. You have her walk, purposeful. You knew my grandmother well. Honey, I knew her when she was young and scandalous, before she became respectable and dangerous. Ruthie set down the soldering iron and turned, her gaze sharp. You found the bottle. It was not a question. Lena nodded. Good. Took long enough. B said it would find the right person eventually. She hid it well, but not so well it would stay lost forever. Ruthie stood, joints popping, and walked to a tarp-covered shape in the corner. She pulled the tarp away, revealing a jukebox. Not just any jukebox, but the Wurlitzer from the Dustlight Saloon, its curved glass panels glowing faintly even unplugged. I picked this up after B died. Said I would refurbish it for the estate sale. But that was a lie. B asked me to hold it until you showed up. Ruthie ran her hand along the chrome trim. There is a night I remember, must have been 15 years ago. 3 men in suits came into the dustlight, looking nervous and angry. They asked Bee for a bottle marked with a serpent. She told them she did not know what they were talking about. But I saw her face, she knew, and she was terrified. After they left, she came to me and said, "Ruthie, if anything happens to me, make sure the jukebox goes to the right hands." "What is in the jukebox?" Ruthie smiled, a mischievous expression that must have broken hearts decades ago. A chorus girl never reveals her secrets until showtime. Watch. She knelt beside the machine and opened a panel on the side, revealing the coin mechanism. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, pressing 2 release tabs simultaneously and sliding out what looked like a solid metal tray. But when she turned it over, a hidden compartment opened, and inside sat a brass wheel no larger than a drink coaster, etched with serpents and letters. "A cipher wheel," Lena breathed. "Bee's insurance policy. The ledger you found has initials and codes. This decodes them into full names, property addresses, transaction amounts. Without this, the ledger is just gibberish. With it, you have a roadmap to a century of theft." Ruthie handed Lena the wheel. "There is a note, too." Lena unfolded the paper tucked beneath the wheel. Miss B's handwriting again, sharp and certain, turned truth with the grain never against it. "The serpent eats its own tail, but you can break the circle. Trust Ruthie, trust Inez, trust paper. The rest will lie." What does she mean, turn with the grain? "The cipher is directional. You align the serpent's head with the date, then read clockwise for names and counterclockwise for amounts." Bee loved her puzzles. Ruthie handed Lena a small notebook. "I have been working on it since she died, decoding what I could. These are the names, real names, not initials. Cross-reference them with current property holdings, and you will see the same families own the same stolen land." Lena flipped through the notebook. Dozens of names, some she recognized from town signs and business fronts. The Hart name appeared 17 times. "This is explosive. That is why they want it buried. Or burned." Ruthie glanced toward the window. "And speaking of which, you have company." A truck had pulled up outside, dark and familiar. Wyatt Griggs stepped out, wearing a pleasant expression that did not reach his eyes. He knocked on the door frame, then entered without waiting for permission. "Miss Flint, Miss Calder. Sorry to interrupt, but we have had a noise complaint. Someone reported loud machinery after hours." Ruthie laughed, a sharp bark of amusement. "Wyatt, it is 4 in the afternoon, and I am soldering circuits, not running a sawmill." "Try harder." Griggs' smile did not waver. "Just doing my job, Ruthie. You know how it is. Neighbors get sensitive." His gaze moved to Lena. "Miss Calder, I heard about the incident at your property. Terrible business. If you need extra security, the Hart Foundation offers protective services for historic buildings. I will manage, thank you." "Suit yourself. But you should know, old buildings attract trouble. Vandals, squatters, people looking for things that do not belong to them." His tone was conversational, but his eyes were cold. "It would be a shame if something else happened. Accidents pile up fast." Ruthie stepped between them, hands on her hips. "Wyatt Griggs, I knew you when you were a bully in short pants, and I am not impressed now that you wear long ones. If you have business here, state it. Otherwise, get out of my shop." For a moment, Griggs' mask slipped, and something dangerous flickered across his face. Then he smiled again and tipped an imaginary hat. "Just being neighborly, ladies. You have a good evening now." After he left, Ruthie locked the door and pulled the shades. "That man is a snake in a pressed shirt. He will not give up easy." Lena tucked the cipher wheel and notebook into her backpack alongside the growing collection of evidence. "How do I stay ahead of him?" "You do not stay ahead. You outflank him. Make copies, spread them around, make sure no single piece is irreplaceable." Ruthie poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle behind the counter. "And you go public before they can bury you private. Griggs works in shadows. Drag him into daylight and he loses his power. Public how? That, honey, is your problem to solve. But I will tell you this. There is a man named Finn Del Rio who runs a speakeasy across town. Fancy place, lots of cameras, live streams every weekend. He has got no love for the Hart family. His grandfather lost a ranch in 1903. Ruthie raised her glass. You want an audience that cannot be silenced? Finn can give you one. Lena clinked her glass against Ruthie's, the whiskey burning warm and clean. Miss B really thought this through. She had 50 years to plan. The question is, do you have the nerve to finish it? Lena thought about the bottle, the ledgers, the cipher wheel, the toxicology report, the quitclaims, and the terrified families who sold their land for pennies while their loved ones were still warm in the ground. She thought about Mayor Celeste's smile that cut like a blade, Griggs' polite threats, and the town built on a lie so big it became a foundation. Yes, she said, I do. Outside, the sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Somewhere in town, Wyatt Griggs was making phone calls. Somewhere, Mayor Celeste was recalculating her strategy. And somewhere, the ghosts of 19 poisoned souls were waiting for someone to finally say their names out loud. Lena walked back to her car with Penny at her side and a plan forming in her mind. The serpent had hidden in the walls long enough. It was time to let it strike. Fin Del Rio's establishment occupied the basement of what had once been a bank. Exposed brick Edison bulbs strung across the ceiling, a polished mahogany bar that curved like a question mark. The Black Vault opened Thursday through Saturday, featuring jazz bands, craft cocktails, and a clientele willing to pay $20 for a drink served in a coupe glass. It was everything the Dustlight was not. Modern, profitable, Instagram-ready. Lena found Finn doing inventory behind the bar, counting bottles with the efficiency of someone who knew his margins down to the penny. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting from territorial to curious. You must be the Calder girl. Heard you have been making waves. He was younger than she expected, maybe 35. With dark hair pulled into a knot and tattoos visible beneath rolled shirt sleeves. I need your help, Finn laughed, a short bark. Everyone needs my help. What makes you special? Because what I have will hurt the same people who hurt your family. Lena set her backpack on the bar. And because you have something I need, an audience. That got his attention. He stopped counting and gave her his full focus. Talk. She told him about the bottle, the ledger, the cipher wheel, the quitclaims, the toxicology report. She showed him the decoded names, including his grandfather's ranch on the list of seized properties. Finn's jaw tightened as he read, his knuckles white against the bar top. My grandfather drank himself to death after he lost that land. My grandmother always said it was not the whiskey that killed him, it was the shame. His voice was quiet, controlled. If you have proof, why not just go to the state attorney? Because evidence disappears. Witnesses recount. Files go missing. I need it public on record in front of too many eyes to bury. Lena leaned forward. You'd live stream every weekend. Multiple cameras, live chat, hundreds of viewers. If I present this here during one of your events, it becomes news before they can spin it. They will shut me down. Health code violations, fire marshal, liquor license review. The Heart Foundation has long fingers. Maybe, but you will be the guy who exposed the biggest scandal in this town's history. That is worth something. Finn studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and scrolled through a calendar. Saturday night. We have a swing band booked, usually pulls 200 in-house and 500 online. I can add a special presentation slot, call it Local History Night. He met her eyes. But if this blows up in my face, you are buying me a new liquor license. Deal. They spent the next hour planning. Omar would present the historical documentation, establishing credibility. Inez would read from the quitclaims, giving the victims faces and names. Ruthie would explain the cipher. Lena would reveal the bottle and the confession inside. Finn would manage the cameras, ensuring redundant streams to multiple platforms. One problem, Finn said. Griggs will get wind of this and try to shut it down before you start. He is predictable that way. Let him try, Lena said. Deputy Abbasi will be here. And if Griggs overreaches in front of cameras, that is just more evidence. Finn grinned, a sharp expression. I like the way you think. Saturday at 8. Do not be late. As Lena left, she felt the momentum shifting. They were no longer reacting. They were setting the trap. Saturday arrived with the weight of a held breath. The Black Vault filled early, patrons drawn by the promise of live music and the rumor of something unexpected. Cameras were positioned at 3 angles, streaming to YouTube, Instagram, and a backup server Finn kept off-site. Omar sat at a corner table with boxes of documents. Inez wore her habit, lending gravitas. Ruthie held court at the bar, charming regulars with stories of the old days. Lena stood backstage with the black bottle wrapped in cloth, her heart hammering. Penny lay at her feet, calm and watchful. At 7:45, the band finished their first set, and Finn took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have something special tonight. A little local history that has been hiding in plain sight. Please welcome Lena Calder." Lena stepped into the light. The room quieted. She unwrapped the bottle and set it on a table under a spotlight. The serpent seal gleamed, ominous and undeniable. In 1903, 19 people died at a charity banquet in this town. The official story was bad whiskey. But the truth is, they were murdered, poisoned deliberately so that their land could be taken while their families grieved. She paused, letting the words settle. "This bottle contains the proof, and tonight you are going to see it." Omar stood and began laying out documents on an overhead projector, narrating the timeline. Birth certificates, death certificates, land deeds transferring for pennies, donations to the Hart Family Trust. The crowd leaned forward, phones out, recording. Then the door burst open. Wyatt Griggs strode in with 2 men in city inspector jackets, their faces set in bureaucratic disapproval. "This establishment is in violation of capacity limits and fire code. Everyone needs to evacuate immediately." Finn did not move from the mic. "Show me the warrant." "We do not need a warrant for public safety." Deputy Noor Abbasi stepped forward from the back of the room, his body camera light blinking red. "Actually, you do. And I would like to see your documentation for this inspection, Mr. Griggs." Griggs's expression hardened. "This does not concern you, Deputy. Public safety concerns everyone, especially when it is being weaponized." Noor's voice was steady, calm. "You can file a formal complaint, follow procedure, or you can leave. But you are not shutting this down without due process." The crowd began to murmur, phones still recording. The live stream chat exploded with comments. Griggs realized he was trapped, his overreach captured from a dozen angles. His jaw clenched. "This is not over," he said, then turned and walked out, his inspectors following. The room erupted in applause. Finn grinned and handed the mic back to Lena. "You were saying..." Lena continued, her voice stronger now. Inez stepped forward and read names from the quitclaims, each one a small tragedy. Ruthie explained the cipher, decoding initials into the families who still held stolen land. The evidence unfolded like a map, undeniable and damning. Then Penny, who had been lying quietly at Lena's feet, suddenly stood and trotted toward the back booth. She nosed at a loose stair tread, whining softly. Lena followed, kneeling beside the dog. The board lifted easily, revealing a hollow beneath. Inside lay a cork-waxed envelope, sealed and labeled in Miss B's handwriting, for the one who finishes it. Lena opened the envelope in front of the cameras. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a confession signed by the original distiller's foreman, naming Cornelius Hart and 4 others as co-conspirators in the mass poisoning. And beneath it, stapled with meticulous care, was a modern invoice. A purchase order from Hart Foundation Events to a chemical supply company, dated 3 weeks ago. Sodium compounds, bitter almond extract, delivery to the gala venue. The same toxins, the same family. A century apart, the room went silent. Then chaos. Lena left the Black Vault near midnight, the confession and invoice secured in multiple hands, copies uploaded to 3 news outlets and a law firm 2 states away. The story was out, spreading faster than any fire. But as she drove back to the dustlight with Penny beside her, a knot of dread tightened in her chest. The saloon was dark when she arrived, but not empty. She smelled the accelerant before she saw the figures in the alley. Coal oil again, splashed against the back wall. A match flared in the darkness. Lena hit the horn, flooding the alley with headlights. The figures scattered, but the match fell. Flames licked up the wall, hungry and fast. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from her trunk and ran, Penny barking behind her. She emptied the canister on the base of the fire, slowing it but not stopping it. A truck skidded into the lot. Vin jumped out with a water tote from the bar, and together they doused the flames, until the wood was charred and smoking, but not consumed. Omar arrived minutes later, breathless, his car loaded with the original documents from the archive. He had moved them the moment the presentation ended, anticipating retaliation. "The bottle," Omar said. "We need to open it. Now, before they destroy it." Inside the damaged saloon, by the light of Lena's phone, they carefully removed the wax seal. The bottle's punt, the indentation in its base, was deeper than normal. Omar tipped it, and a rolled paper slid free, protected by glass and time. The inner confession. Names, dosages, payment schedules, all signed by the foreman who had mixed the poison and 5 men who had ordered it. Cornelius Hart's signature was bold, unapologetic. Sirens wailed in the distance. Deputy Noor's voice crackled over the radio, announcing arrests for attempted arson. Griggs and 2 accomplices, caught on a neighboring security camera. Lena held the confession in her hands, this final piece of the puzzle, and felt the weight of a century lifting. The serpent had struck, but not at her. At the lie that built a dynasty. She photographed the confession from every angle, then handed the original to Omar. "Put this with the rest. Make sure it survives." Outside, fire trucks arrived too late to be useful, but in time to document the damage. The dustlight's back wall was scorched black, but the building stood. Penny sat at Lena's feet, finally calm. As if she knew the danger had passed, Lena recorded a statement on her phone, one continuous take, naming every piece of evidence, every name on the ledger, every crime committed and concealed. She sent it to Inez, to Finn, to Noor, to the press outlets already calling for comment. Then she sat on the hood of her car and waited for sunrise, the serpent bottle empty at last, its secrets no longer hers alone to carry. The Hart Foundation's Centennial Gala was scheduled for 3 weeks after the Black Vault presentation, long enough for the town to fracture along fault lines of belief and denial, but not long enough for the scandal to fade. Mayor Celeste Hart had considered cancelling. Her advisors had recommended it, but cancellation would look like admission. So the gala proceeded, held in the renovated territorial hall where the original poisoning had taken place, a location choice that now seemed less like tribute and more like hubris. String lights crisscrossed the courtyard. Donor banners hung from the rafters, each one bearing the name of a family whose fortune had roots in stolen land. A stage had been erected at the far end, flanked by projection screens, meant to display a curated history of the town's progress. Tables were laden with catered food, wine bottles wrapped in elegant sleeves, and programs printed on expensive cardstock detailing the evening's celebration. Lena stood at the edge of the crowd, wearing the same jeans and jacket she had worn to the Black Vault, refusing to dress up for a ceremony built on lies. Penny sat beside her, a red bandana around her neck, alert and watching. Omar was near the stage, briefcase in hand, looking professorial and calm. Inez moved through the crowd in her habit, greeting people by name, her presence a reminder that faith and justice were not always separate. Ruthie held court near the bar, resplendent in a vintage cocktail dress, her jeweled glasses catching the light. Finn had positioned himself near the AV booth, a laptop open, fingers ready. Deputy Noor Abbasi stood in uniform near the main entrance, his body camera recording, his presence both protection and witness. Across the courtyard, Wyatt Griggs was notably absent, currently detained pending formal charges of arson, obstruction, and conspiracy. At precisely 7 o'clock, Mayor Celeste Hart took the stage. She wore a navy suit, pearls at her throat, her hair perfect, her smile practiced. The crowd quieted as she gripped the microphone. "Good evening, friends and neighbors. Tonight, we celebrate 100 years of progress, partnership, and community. This town has grown from a dusty rail stop into a place we are proud to call home. And that transformation did not happen by accident. It happened because people like you invested in our future. She paused for applause, which came politely but not enthusiastically. Tonight, we honor the legacy of those who came before us, the visionaries who built schools, hospitals, and infrastructure that serve us all. And we look forward to the next century of shared prosperity. The screens behind her bloomed with images. Historical photographs of the town's founding, the rail depot, the first schoolhouse, smiling children in modern classrooms, doctors in the heart wing of the hospital, ribbon-cutting ceremonies with Celeste front and center, scissors gleaming. Then the images changed. Finn had waited until the official presentation was 3 minutes in, long enough for the crowd to settle, long enough for Celeste to relax into her narrative. Then he triggered the override. The curated slideshow vanished, replaced by the evidence montage he and Omar had compiled. The serpent bottle filled the screen, rotating slowly under spotlight. Then came Miss B's ledger, pages turning, initials circled in red. The cipher wheel appeared, demonstrating how the codes translated to names. Death certificates from 1903 laid out in a grid, 19 faces staring from the past. Quitclaims, signatures shaking, dates matching the deaths within weeks. Omar's voice came through the sound system, narrating with clinical precision. In June of 1903, 53 people attended a charity banquet in this very hall. By midnight, 19 were dead from acute poisoning. Within 6 months, 11 families had transferred land ownership to a holding company owned by Cornelius Hart, great-grandfather of our current mayor. The screen shifted to land deeds, traced forward through a century of transfers, shell companies and trust reconfigurations, always circling back to Hart family control. Property maps appeared, color-coded to show seized parcels still held by the foundation. The crowd began to murmur, voices rising in confusion and anger. Celeste tried to reclaim the microphone. This is a malicious distortion of history. These allegations have been investigated But Inez stepped onto the stage, her voice cutting through the noise with the authority of someone who had spent decades hearing confessions and demanding truth. These are not allegations, Mayor Hart. These are documents, legal records, death certificates signed by coroners, quitclaims notarized by your family's attorneys. I have kept these records for 30 years, and I'm reading them now so that the victims finally have their names spoken aloud. She began to read, family by family, name by name, each quitclaim a small tragedy, each signature a capitulation born of grief and desperation. The crowd went silent, listening as the ghosts of a century were finally acknowledged. Ruthie joined her on stage, carrying the jukebox cipher wheel. I danced in this hall when I was 17 years old. I knew some of these families, and I watched them leave town, broken and ashamed, while the people who poisoned them built monuments to their own generosity. She held up the cipher wheel. This is how your mayor's family kept their books, coded, hidden. But Miss B. Calder decoded it, and now you know. The final images appeared on screen. The foreman's confession, Cornelius Hart's signature bold and unapologetic. And then, devastating in its modern relevance, the invoice. Hart Foundation events purchasing the same compounds used in 1903, delivered 3 weeks before the gala, where 16 people fell ill. The toxicology report followed, side by side with the 1903 coroner findings. Identical markers, identical methods. A century apart, Noor stepped forward, a folded document in his hand. Mayor Celeste Hart, I am serving you with a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy, evidence tampering, and solicitation of arson. You have the right to remain silent. The courtyard erupted. Some people shouted denials, others wept. Many simply stood in stunned silence as the foundation of their civic pride cracked and crumbled. Celeste's mask finally shattered, her face collapsing into fury and desperation as Noor placed her in handcuffs. She looked directly at Lena, her voice low and venomous. You have destroyed this town. Lena met her gaze without flinching. No, your family did that a century ago. I just stopped pretending it did not happen as Celeste was led away. Finn's live stream chat scrolled past at frantic speed. Thousands of comments, shares multiplying, news outlets picking up the story in real time. The serpent had struck, and the wound it opened could not be stitched closed with donations and PR campaigns. Lena stepped onto the stage, the empty bottle in her hands. The crowd turned to her, waiting. She spoke quietly, but the microphone carried her words to every corner of the hall and every screen tuned to the stream. This bottle held poison for 100 years, but it also held proof. My grandmother knew that truth does not expire. It just waits for someone brave enough to open the seal. She set the bottle down carefully. The land that was stolen will be returned. The families that were driven away will be compensated. And the foundation that was built on their graves will be dismantled and rebuilt into something that actually serves this community. She paused, not as punishment, as repair. Inez stepped beside her. We are forming a community trust to steward the reclaimed assets. Elected board, public meetings, transparent accounting. If you want a voice in how this town heals, you will have one. Omar added, the archive will remain open. Every document, every record, available for anyone who wants to understand how we got here. History is not comfortable, but it is necessary. The crowd began to shift, the shock giving way to something more complex. Anger, yes. Grief, certainly. But also relief. The unburdening that comes when a festering wound is finally lanced. 6 months later, the Dustlight Saloon reopened on a cool October evening, its charred back wall replaced with reclaimed wood, the bar refinished. The jukebox restored and humming with Ruthie's careful touch. But it was no longer just a saloon. It was a museum, a community center, and a testimony. The serpent bottle sat in a glass case behind the bar, sealed again, this time with a plaque explaining its contents and its journey from weapon to evidence to relic. Beside it, Miss B's ledger lay open to a page of her margin notes, her handwriting a bridge between past and present. Omar curated the historical exhibit upstairs, where visitors could trace the full story from poisoning to exposure. Inez chaired the community trust, which had already begun returning parcels to descendant families and funding genuine infrastructure improvements. Noor had been promoted to sheriff after the previous administration was removed, and he rebuilt the department with officers who understood that the law was meant to protect everyone, not just the powerful. Finn hosted open ledger nights every Thursday, inviting speakers to share suppressed histories and difficult truths. Ruthie tended bar alongside Lena, their banter easy and warm, 2 generations of women who refused to let the past be buried quietly. Lena had not left after all. The 3-day plan had become 6 months, then a year, then a commitment. She poured drinks, gave tours, answered questions from journalists and researchers and descendants who came looking for proof of their own family's losses. Penny slept by the door, older now but still watchful, still protective. On this particular evening, as the sun set over the desert and the first patrons filtered in, Lena stood behind the bar and looked at the bottle. Its serpent coiled eternal, frozen in glass, a reminder that some legacies were poison and some were antidote. And the difference was what you chose to do when you found them. She poured a drink, slid it across the bar to a customer, and smiled. The dust light was open. The truth was told, and the town, slowly and painfully, was learning to build on solid ground instead of stolen earth. The serpent had struck, but the wound had healed cleaner than anyone expected. And in the end, that was enough. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.